Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we are finally going to be reviewing the newest album from Courtney Marie Andrews called May Your Kindness Remain. I got to reviewing Courtney Marie Andrews way too late in 2016. And honestly, for as critical as I was of that album, I might have been a little bit too hard on it as a whole. Part of it is that she was facing some really stiff competition in 2016 that made for some easy and apt comparisons. The list of women in country, indie or otherwise, who dropped literate, intensely emotive records in 2016, that was considerable. She had an uphill battle there. But the truth is that some of my criticisms of her last album, Honest Life, did feel a tad forced in retrospect, as it was certainly an album intended to grow through the understated details and the subtext, rely more on gorgeous vocal delivery and production to carry that deeper message. And I'll admit, in my headlong rush towards the end of the year to cover as much as I could, I probably didn't take it in as deeply as I would prefer nowadays. And yet, even with all of that, her absolutely stunning deep cut only in my mind notched a well-deserved spot among my best songs of 2016, a late entry that's extremely well-deserved. Well, no such excuses for me this time around, and given how much critical acclaim this follow-up is receiving for fleshing out more of the lyrical details against arrangements I know are bound to sound terrific given what happened on Honest Life, I was really looking forward to giving this my full attention before both Lindy Ortega and Casey Musgrave sweep in to grab the spotlight. So alright, what did I find on May Your Kindness Remain? Oh wow, I was not expecting this at all. I mean, that's not quite true. Of course I was expecting quality from Courtney Marie Andrews, but May Your Kindness Remain showcased the sort of ambition to expand and refine her sound beyond what you would typically expect in her brand of country folk on the indie scene, pulling on soul and gospel and even some blues rock for a sound that's much more layered and developed. And this was almost certainly a gamble for her. I heard a lot of indie country acts default to a sound that might seem bigger, more arranged, but played at very comfortable vintage tones. Now, this record, it does not do that. And when you couple with a considerable step up in the quality of songwriting, she set a bar that'll be very tough to challenge for the rest of 2018. And keep in mind, we've already gotten great records from Courtney Patton and Caitlin Smith this year, and yet this, probably better than all of them. This is among the best of 2018. Of course, a huge part of this is Courtney Marie Andrews herself. She's got a great voice, but it's taken her a while to get that sort of production that can really flatter it to the fullest extent. Sure, she can play for subtle and intimate on songs like Took You Up and Rough Around the Edges, both of which are absolute standouts, at least to me. Really do love those songs, but she can belt with the best of them, allowing her throatier tones to come through in a way that almost reminds me a little of Reba McEntire in the mid to late 80s. Maybe not quite as fiery, but leaning into the soul and almost gospel touches Reba didn't on songs like the title track and Long Road Back to You, where Courtney Marie Andrews has that weathered, lived-in character to her voice that just adds so much texture in the best way possible. These are songs that are feeling lived in, and even when she's writing from, say, the perspective of a desperate immigrant in the deserts of Arizona on border, and even that song's drawn from real experiences she has, she can incredibly sell that bone-deep exhaustion and deep-seated anger that she knows she has to keep simmering just below the surface. And hell, her delivery alone is what keeps a song like I've Heard Worse from some really questionable territory in the content. This is a song where she's clearly in love with somebody who is at the very least neglectful and disrespectful, and yet she seems almost fine with it because, hey, she's been hurt worse in the past, almost contradicting her mother's advice that we love those who we think we deserve. And let me stress, a song like this lives and dies on the delivery, especially when she doesn't tip her hand that she might be potentially unhappy or this is unhealthy in her lyrics. So to convey those deeper questions of self-worth and the healthiness of this relationship, that has to come from the delivery alone, which necessarily adds some ambiguity, and yet it's amazing how layered and potent her performance is on that song. So alright, might as well get into the content now. And my big criticism of Honest Life was how the thematic narrative felt kind of scattered, maybe even a little underwritten. And yet Courtney Marie Andrews has solved it in spades. Because in terms of using the right words and the poetic turns of phrase and detail, she nails so much of that lived-in, humanistic picture. Critics are always sketching some comparisons, favorable ones, with Joni Mitchell, and while I personally would balk a little bit at that, I do hear some of it. Both women approach the ambiguities of emotional relationships with a poise and maturity that lets the flaws of both partners ring through. For as much as this record is full of love songs, the larger underlying subtext is surrounding self-worth and the difficult questions and compromises that many strong women make in its exploration. And it's a lonely album too, because it realizes the sad truth that said strength can often be isolating. The title track, great example of this, speaking to an old friend for whom Courtney Marie Andrews praised that good-hearted nature at her core will remain when more conventional strength will bleed away. Or take a song like Lift the Lonely from My Heart, a very frank exploration of depression and how despite efforts to find oneself in a partner or a sense of wistful longings, to lift that loneliness, it has to be driven from your own personality. It has to come from your choices from within. Or take Kindness of Strangers, where it can be so easy to be exploited or pulled away on a tough road that you're walking, especially when you're trying not to be cynical about other people. Finding that kindness in other people is often what really keeps you going. And hell, when you look at Two Cold Nights in Buffalo, where she observes that decaying industrial city from her cheap motel on the wrong side of the tracks, you have to wonder that the larger sense of indifference is what brought upon so much of that larger decay in America, or at least exacerbated it. But then you get the love songs, and the level of intimate detail and questioning complicated subtext beneath them, like Rough Around the Edges and This House and Long Road Back to You and Took You Up, that shows so much texture in the detail that she calls in these relationships, where the meaning isn't really spoken aloud, but you can clearly pick up on it. I've seen comparisons to similar styles of writing coming from alt-country singer-songwriter titans like James McMurtry, and yeah, with these songs, Courtney Marie Andrews can match that, and that's high praise indeed. But what will stand out the most on this project and will be the most immediately distinctive for her, the production and the sound, which does a tremendous job accentuating those lonely expanses without feeling oversold, mostly through the usage of electric guitar and organ to build thicker, smoky simmer that swells across a binaural mix that is amazingly well balanced against the sparse percussion and amazingly well placed bass melodies. The tunes there are a little bit more ragged around the edges, but they never feel suffocating or utilize the texture in a way that will get distracting from the main vocal melody. Honestly, some of the mixed placement kind of remind me a bit of post-rock, but if anything, it's closer to the more atmospheric sides of folk and country that haven't quite been explored all that well outside of acts like Casualties of Cool. Most acts in the indie folk scene just drown everything in reverb, and yet this is not that. But where Casualties of Cool was more intentionally acoustic and brittle in its space, there's a much greater sense of warmth overall that wells up through the melodies. Some of which, yeah, can feel a little bit familiar, like on Took You Up, but never to the point where it feels obtrusive, at least to me. More importantly, it shows a sort of melodic balance that provides some supportive swell to cradle her voice, but also gives her the space she really needs to belt. From the fantastic piano holding Rough Around the Edges against the more supple grooves, to the organ on the title track in This House, to the shuddering electric leads on Lift the Lonely from My Heart and Took You Up. And yet, for as easy as it would be for this record to smolder in its atmosphere, and it's some damn great smolder, there's actually a pulse. There's some tempo to accentuate that atmosphere. Like the acoustic textures against the rich layering of I've Hurt Worse, where there are touches of accordion add to the misty tone, to the much more prominent lead guitar line driving Kindness of Strangers that's really quite catchy, or the seedier side of Two Cold Nights in Buffalo with some of the great lyrical detail, or the outright bluesy stomp of Border with the organ, that fat bass groove, and the genuine snarl of the guitar and the organ. This is a record that isn't afraid to infuse some genuine muscle into the compositions, and it's genuinely thrilling how well Courtney Marie Andrews can sell it while still sounding very comfortable amidst against it. But as a whole, you know what, I keep trying to find apt comparison points for this sound, and the closest I'm getting is what Miranda Lambert stretched over a double album on The Weight of These Wings, but even that doesn't quite feel apt, as she uses the space to accentuate her lack of a place. Whereas, while Courtney Marie Andrews might take that dusty road kind of alone at this point, at least alone in her own mind, any place that she walks on this record, she makes hers. Plus, a much tighter and refined release as a whole. And yeah, if any of the many comparisons I made got you excited about this project, you need to hear this album yesterday and hope to God it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. And while I could nitpick a little bit and say that a few lines feel a tad clumsy like on Two Cold Nights in Buffalo, or that I might have preferred a little bit more bite overall, this is still one of the best albums of 2018, netting a light 9 out of 10, absolutely a recommendation. Folks, just like Honest Life, May Your Kindness Remain by Courtney Marie Andrews will fly under the radar of entirely too many people, and you're not going to be one to miss it or not appreciate it. Definitely get this one. You won't regret it. it's pretty awesome. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Not gonna be late to the punch with this one, and yeah, one of the best of the year. Hands down, easy, just so much texture, so much soul to this. Just really had that smoky ambiance that really clicked for me. And yeah, you'll want to buy it. Links in the description below. Got the poll up there. I'm not sure how many people are really going to care about this release, but hey, for those of you who have heard it, there's your option to tell me what you think about it. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process, link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. I'm going to be slightly changing things up with my Patreon in the next couple of days, so be in your eyes for that. And if you want to see my schedule, link is down there to my Instagram where I post it once it gets updated. Beyond that, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.